In the Wild West, silence was louder than gunshots, and every man carried a secret.
He came back to the town he swore he'd never see again.
5 outlaws, 1 broken town, and no sheriff to save them.
Old brothers, old wounds, one final stand.
Sometimes redemption doesn't come quietly. It bleeds for you.
The sun rose over the plains like a tired promise, pale and unsure, spilling light across dust and memory. The town of Dry Creek woke slowly, as it always did, with the creak of porch boards and the cough of old men who had outlived their luck. Horses shifted in their tethers. A windmill groaned. Somewhere a child laughed, a thin sound that cut through the morning like hope did, rare but sharp when it came. Jonah Hale stood outside the livery, hat in his hands, staring at the dirt as if it might speak back. He had been sheriff once, a lifetime ago by the way his bones felt. The badge had left a pale shadow on his chest where the sun had not touched him in years. He had put it down after the night the river ran red, and the wrong man fell. Justice, he had learned, was a word folks said to sleep better. Out here, the land took what it wanted, and men learned to live with the take. A rider came in from the east, dust trailing like a comet's tail. The horse was strong but weary, head low, breath rasping. Jonah knew the rider before the man lifted his face. Elias Crow. Same narrow eyes, same scar at the corner of his mouth, earned when they were boys and thought knives made them brave. Brothers once in everything but blood, broken apart by a woman with a soft voice and a hard fate. Elias swung down, boots hitting the ground with the certainty of someone who had nowhere else to stand. Jonah, he said, as if the name weighed something. Town smaller. It's the same, Jonah said. You're just older. Elias smiled without humor. We all are. They stood in the heat, words circling like wary dogs. The past was a canyon between them, deep and loud with echoes. Finally Elias spoke. I need a horse. And water. I won't be staying. You never do, Jonah said. Inside the saloon, the piano coughed through a song that had lost its melody. Marybeth wiped the bar, with a rat older than most of the men who leaned on it. Her eyes lifted when she saw Elias, and for a heartbeat the room went still. She had chosen Jonah all those years ago, chosen steadiness over fire, and the choice had cost them all. Her hair was streaked with gray now, but the steadiness remained. The fire, too, banked but alive. Elias tipped his hat. Mary, she nodded. Elias, that was all. It was enough. By noon, the town buzzed with the kind of rumor that grows legs and runs. A gang had been seen to the south. Rough men with fast guns and quicker cruelty. They had robbed a freight wagon, left the driver bleeding under the sun. Dry Creek had no sheriff now, not in truth. Jonah had trained a boy once, but the boy had taken a bullet meant for someone else. Since then, the town had relied on prayer and the hope that trouble would pass them by. It wouldn't. The gang rode in at dusk, 5 of them shadows long and ugly. They laughed too loud, drank too fast. Ian kicked over a barrel for sport. Another grabbed a girl by the wrist, until her brother raised a fist and paid for it with his teeth. Jonah watched from the street, hands steady, heart loud. He felt the old pull, the muscle memory of duty. He also felt the weight of his mistake, the river, the wrong man's eyes. Elias watched, too, from the edge of the crowd. He had run from towns like this, from messes that clung. He had told himself he was done with causes, but the girl's cry cut him the way it always had, the way it still could. That night, Jonah sat on his porch with a rifle across his knees, the sky wide and cold. Elias joined him without asking. They shared a bottle, the silence easing into something like peace. You going to pick the badge back up? Elias asked. Jonah shook his head. I don't get to. Elias looked at the stars. Maybe you don't. But I do. Morning came hard. The gang took over the square, guns visible, smiles thin. The leader, a man with eyes like cracked ice, announced terms. Food, money, a message carved into fear. Jonah stepped forward before he could stop himself. Words failed. The leader laughed. A shot rang out. Elias stood in the street, gun smoking, eyes clear. The world narrowed to sound and dust, and the thunder of blood. The gang scattered, returning fire. Windows shattered. Horses screamed. Jonah moved then, not as a sheriff, but as a man who knew where to stand. He covered Elias's flank, steady and sure, the 2 of them falling into an old dance. When it ended, the square was quiet but for the wind. 2 of the gang lay still. The others had fled, leaving their dead behind like promises broken twice. Elias sank to his knees, a dark bloom spreading across his side. Jonah was there an instant, hands pressing, voice low. Stay with me, he said. The words a prayer and a command. Marybeth came running with cloth and water, her hands calm. He's bleeding bad, she said. I know, Jonah said. They carried Elias into the church because it was the only place big enough for hope. The preacher prayed. Marybeth worked. Jonah held Elias's hand like he had when they were boys, when cuts were shallow and futures wide. I never meant for it to end like it did, Elias whispered. With you, with her. Jonah swallowed. I know. The sun climbed and fell again. Elias lived. Barely. The gang did not return. Weeks passed. The town breathed easier. A new sheriff came, a woman from the north with eyes sharp and hands steady. Jonah helped where he could, without the badge. Elias healed slow, learning patience the hard way. One morning he stood at the edge of town, a horse ready. Marybeth walked with him. You could stay, she said. He smiled, real this time. I don't belong. But I'm glad I came. He shook Jonah's hand, pulled him close. You were always the better man. Jonah watched him ride out, dust rising, the plains swallowing the past. The town settled back into its rhythm, smaller than memory, larger than regret. At night, Jonah sat on his porch and listened to the windmills sing. He thought of choices and chances, of fire and steadiness, of how the West took and took, but sometimes, if you stood your ground, it gave something back. The sun rose again, tired but true, and Dry Creek woke to it, carrying on.